All right. So last time we had we did an interview. We talked about how we were going to do masking. We were going to talk about masking. And so my good friend Elise here is so excited to share all of her wisdom about masking with us.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I'm also nervous. Um, but I'm
Good.
really excited about this. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart
Mhm.
and is commonly talked about, but I think that we can add some more to the conversation for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for those that aren't aware of what masking is, how would you define masking? What?
Actually, I would love to ask you how you define masking. What do you like? What do you consider masking to mean?
My first 30 years of life. Just kidding. Bro, okay, I'll be serious. Okay, what is masking? Masking is I kind of feel like it's more of a trauma response in in being able to kind of pick up on social uh, traditions, things that things you see on like TV and movies and how people interact. And then you say, oh, that's how you're supposed to do that. If it's not innate for you, because there are definitely times in my life where I didn't react the way I was supposed to. And it really, really made people angry. So then I learned, I guess I haven't been very clear with my audience that I'm autistic. I don't even know if we talked about that in the last video, but I was diagnosed in January. So that's pretty recent. And I'm still unmasking, and we'll talk about that. But I'm doing it slowly. And also, just like because it becomes so innate to just kind of put on this face and laugh when you're supposed to and say the things you're supposed to and mirror other people. And I became really, really good at just putting on the face that I felt like other people wanted me to be. Um, Honestly, I could even say that Runaway Bride, she was autistic, right? That's
I
how
like
I
that opinion.
that's how I feel because she just became what every man wanted her to be, and then she was like, "Who am I?" Yeah. So, and I think it's common for those that are neurodivergent to have identity crises like every year. I think that's pretty normal.
So, my opinion is that we need to change our labels. We either need to change our labels or clarify better what we mean because there's a very specific neurodivergent experience that we call masking, which is actually a maladaptive version of something super normal.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's true.
human beings mirror each other, okay?
That's
And like
true.
the same way that you, I'm assuming, would you show up socially with the same behavior with your kids as you would with your parents, as you would with your friends, as you would with strangers?
No, but that's funny because there's this part of me that wants to. Like, do you feel that? Like, you just want to be
Mhm.
the same person with everyone? Like, you don't want to just go through the filter all the time?
I think that's because a couple theories.
Great.
Number one is that allistic people mask too,
Hmm.
but they mask in a way that is normal and they don't consider it a burden. It's not as energetically taxing,
Ah,
it's as
yes.
emotionally taxing,
Yes.
in part because number two, neurodivergent people are obsessed with authenticity.
Right?
In
They really are.
I think there's also a little bit of confusion of what it means to be authentic. And to be fair, that's going to be different for different people. But it's unrealistic to pressure yourself to behave the same way in every single circumstance. And I would even wager that that's not even healthy. It's not healthy.
I
And
like that.
so this is an area where, to be clear, the world pressures us to behave in ways that are not healthy and that are not kind. And we have strength and we have weaknesses in terms of what is healthy. So
Hmm.
this is a way where we may not understand or respond by default in the healthy way, where
Hmm.
we just want to vibe and exist and just not worry about it.
Hmm.
But the growth thing to do is to think about it and think about how do I want to present myself in this situation.
Right.
Because there are always going to be situations where it's not healthy, it's not safe, it's not kind to to display what is true for you in the same quantity or in the same way,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of this paradox where the burden is disproportionate on neurodivergent people to show up in ways, but we are also more liable, like in a way that's unhealthy, right? But we're also more liable to resist healthy adaptation,
Right.
healthy, like, let's consider the circumstance and make adjustments.
Right.
And so there's some amount of meeting in the middle that needs to be done. And I believe that this middle is not like right in the middle, that depending on the person, their life circumstances, the amount of unmasking process that someone's done,
Hmm.
that it is irrelevant where in the middle.
Right.
But when you've spent your whole life suffering, any amount of continuing to cater to other people is just, it feels terrible. It feels outrageous. So I also want to honor that. Like, you're allowed to just 100% be angry about the heavy burden that you have been carrying for so long and be unwilling to engage in that part of the process yet. But I do think that it's an important part of the unmasking process, that you're peeling back all of the conditioning
Hmm.
of presenting yourself in a way that other people want instead of what is true for you,
Hmm.
finding out what is true for you, and then making choices.
Totally.
Hmm.
Totally. I mean, there are some people, not everyone I feel safe with, but basically saying, um, looking at you in the eye is kind of draining right now.
Hmm.
So I'm not, you know, and to be fair, like that would have been terrifying for me to even, admit because that's considered rude, to not look at someone in the eye. But I have to tell you, as I've been unmasking and noticing it and noticing how much it drains me to just
Hmm.
consistently look at someone. And I know that there are people like, I've had many conversations with neurotypical friends that are like, well, I don't always look at everyone in the eye either. And I'm like, yeah, but I think it's different.
You're
I
not
think
thinking about it. You're
you're
not
not thinking
worrying
about
about it.
you're not
Obsessing
feeling
in
like
the
they're
moment.
staring into your soul. It's like really energetically overwhelming sometimes and it depends on the person too. Some people
Mm.
it's fine. Other people, they are literally just like staring down into my heart and soul and I'm like, back off. Like this is too much, right? So, and then also just the idea of like fidgets, right? Like I'm doing that more in my conversations. I said, do you want someone that's going to be present and hold space for you and is engaged in the conversation? Then let me freaking fidget, you know?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
So
I think
just being honest about your needs, I think is a big step.
for sure. I also want to enter astrology in this
Yay.
conversation.
Let's do it.
Okay, Because remind me your rising sign.
Virgo, Virgo.
Virgo.
Yep.
My rising sign is Scorpio.
Aha.
So when back up. So I have had the honor and privilege of meeting and teaching a lot of neurodivergence astrology,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I'm connecting with people all of the time.
So
And
fun.
something that I've noticed is that it's really hard for people to parse out the difference between the rising sign and the sun sign,
Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and this is going to be more so if they're neurodivergent because we have a tendency, again, it's the authenticity thing, to be like, hold off, how is there a difference between self and self-expression and like identity and body? There's no difference. There's no difference because we try to do it the same. Like
Right.
for us, it's conceptually the same. And so it's a challenge to be able to feel into the nuances and separate those two concepts,
Hmm.
especially when we talk about rising sign and we say, hey, this is about your body, which you're really disconnected from, your identity, which you entirely create based off of what other people want and what other people think about you. And it's your mask, which is something that you're doing in a really unhealthy way. And you've never been taught the like normal kind of mask.
Oh,
And
I
so let's
love this. I love this. So what happens if it's the same? My sun sign is the same as my ascendant.
then there is a lot of cohesiveness.
Yeah.
Mine is not. In fact, it's a quincunx energy. And it was really healing for me to understand that my rising sign and my moon sign are in the same
Hmm.
sign, but they're also far enough apart that they're not conjunct, they're not interfering with each other.
Right.
So, um, because every time that I've had tried to approach people from a Scorpio moon, like the response has been very, very holistic, autistic dynamics, being like, why? Can you small talk instead? This is really uncomfortable for me. I'm like, what is small talk? Can you not?
It so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hate it.
And like just the amount of negative feedback where anytime I approach with from a vulnerable emotional moon space, they're
Right.
like, how about not? We don't like that. And then to because those energies are more similar than my sun sign.
Hmm.
And then to go back to that and be like, oh wait, no, there actually is a difference, a subtle but distinct difference between the energy of my moon and the energy of my rising. And when I actually approach with my rising rather than my moon, it does tend to go better.
Interesting.
It's the energy that I'm designed to approach with.
Interesting. Because like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people take me better when I come more in my moon sign.
Really?
Because people don't like to be told what to do.
Well, is that your understanding of what it means to have a Virgo ascendant? And is that true or good
They
or
don't
right
like
or
to know it
healthy?
all. No,
Or
I'm
is
just
that just the shadow of your rights coming out, which is not going to be a happy time no matter what?
right. No, no, this is interesting. I'm really glad we're bringing astrology into this because no, of course, I know that I enjoy people coming to me for resources. Like they want to know information and they know I know the information. Don't get me wrong. I love that. Um, but I find that I guess as I've become more I don't want to say soft spoken. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's definitely more vulnerable and more honest in my communication with others. It seems to be received better than me just being in this place of like, I know what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Astrological perspective, I think that it's helpful for people in general, but also especially like the neurodivergent process. In some ways, getting to know your own chart will spur unmasking. It just will.
Absolutely.
Um, and that the expression of your chart energies
Hmm.
changes as you do the unmasking work separately. And I do think that the placement that is affected the most by the process is the rising sign
Hmm.
because we've been pushing on and kind of controlling and forcing and masking our actual rising sign
Right.
as something else, as from a place of misunderstanding.
Hmm.
Both a misunderstanding caused by conditioning that the best and smartest thing is to just do whatever it is that we think people want from us.
Right.
And also from a misunderstanding that we are a very, very complex, multifaceted, where there are parts of us, there are pieces of us, and you don't have to display the whole all at once.
I
And
agree.
so I feel like part of this understanding has come from getting to know my own chart, but part of it just comes from having Scorpio rising and then the Aries sun, because there's such a strong contrast between those energies.
There's some
Aries,
intensity though. There's definitely intensity.
hmm,
Like
there's an
that is,
intensity, but like Aries is going to be way more liable to be an open book. It's going to be fine having a social conversation.
I guess
It's
I could
going to
see that.
be fine being honest. There's even a level of vulnerability that Aries is just really cool with.
Hmm.
Scorpio is not. And Scorpio is very, very private and very, very discretionary.
Right.
Very discretionary. And
Hmm.
so, maybe even more than most, it is both appropriate and also necessary for me to change how I show up depending on the person, the situation,
Right.
what's going on, because it's just, it's an energy that's not, it's very cautious.
Right.
And so
That makes sense.
sitting with that for me has allowed me to kind of see the pattern in a different way for other neurodivergent people, where
Hmm.
it's like, I don't even know what to do with my rising sign because I have this whole traumatic experience with it my whole life.
Right.
And also, I don't understand what the role of it is, what it even looks like to do that in a healthy way,
It's
because it's
understandable.
hard for me to separate it from my sun sign. Well, I mean, depending, I'm some people tend to understand that, oh, we have different pieces of ourselves and I show up in different ways in different circumstances with different archetypes.
Hmm.
But the sun and the rising especially are a struggle to differentiate.
Hmm.
And I think that that is especially true for neurodivergent people.
I can see that. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So you're saying that as you're unmasking, that you approach people, especially like new people, from more of your sun sign.
Um,
Is that what I'm
yes,
gathering?
yes, but for more detail, for more detail, I used to approach people from my moon
Right.
in a way that was putting me even like in a very vulnerable, like an unhealthy level of vulnerability,
Gotcha.
where it was a struggle to understand, am I being too private? And then I would get a lot of negative feedback about that. Or am I
Oh,
being
okay.
too vulnerable? And then
Right.
getting a lot of negative feedback about that.
Right.
I was prioritizing the energies in my chart expressing wrong, in part because I do run a lot of intense energy. And so, very, very early, like I was cornered into the Pisces area of my chart, which is a very small area. It's a
Right.
stellium, but when most of my chart is Scorpio and Aries and all of that is bad, you kind of get pushed into whatever area is safe to express. And so I never
Totally.
understood
Totally.
what the hierarchy is of when things express and how much. And so the more I've learned to unmask, the more I've learned myself, the more I accept myself and understand myself and allow myself, the more the natural order of things falls into place where I lead with my rising and then my sun sign and the moon sign comes once there's established relationship.
I love this. I wish I had you like early in my life to explain this to me because it makes so much sense now that I think about it. My Cancer moon wanted intimacy and connection like immediately. And that's gonna freak people out. Obvi, right? And so I
Scorpio
would jump
moon, I relate.
so I would jump into friendships and relationships quite quickly because I wanted to establish that intimacy quickly. But what I needed to do is go more into my discerning Virgo, is what you're
Mhm.
saying.
Hmm. And you might find that as you understand and allow your Virgo energy more, that there's a difference in how it expresses depending on where you're at, like the context, on what's appropriate, on what feels good. Not only is it authentic, but it's the amount that is safe and feels good. So the type of Virgo energy and the amount of Virgo energy when you're just barely meeting someone versus when you're starting to become friends with them. Maybe you're comfortable enough and safe enough where you feel like you can be a little bit more pointed in your Virgo advice. And then,
Right.
like, the flavor of it might change as well because Virgo is nurturing in its own way.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then that will lead to allowing the Cancer moon.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I do tend to info dump a lot. So I was like, is that autism or is that Virgo? Or is it both? Or is it just my 1-3 human design, right? Because I've been researching all the things. So who the heck knows?
My answer whenever someone asks a question like this is yes. It's yes.
Yeah.
The answer
Yes.
is yes. You're gonna find repeating themes and patterns no matter what system of seeing yourself you use, because that is yourself.
Yes.
That's an energy that you hold. And
Yes.
one system is going to conceptualize that energy one way, and one system is going to conceptualize that energy another way. And so people love to like, okay, who can I point fingers? Where can I find like the definitive, this is why I'm like this? And that's the wrong way to see it. It's you're like this, and this is how this system presents that.
I love that. I
Mhm.
love it. Absolutely. Because then everyone, then there's like the question of, well, is it trauma too, on top of the neurodiversity? Yes. Yes, it is.
Yes.
All of it.
Yes. I
All
have
of it.
found that people's wherever they're at, right? Whether they're in the I'm deep in trauma brain part of the neurodivergent journey, the I'm in burnout, but I'm
Mhm.
trying part of the
Right.
neurodivergent journey, the everything's going great part, they still express their chart energies. It's just in the way that you would express as a neurodivergent, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
So your coping mechanisms are going to reflect your chart energies, and like I run some Pisces energy. Between the Pisces energy and the Scorpio energy, I will dissociate and go really deep into my head. Like that's
I
my
don't.
unhealthy coping because that's one of the shadow ways those energies can display. And
Right.
when I'm doing neurodivergent behaviors, I'm gonna do the whole let's go really deep and let's have all of this juicy Scorpio exploration and like see what's under the surface. And do the info dump way, but from that energy where
Mhm.
your version of info dump is probably going to be very different in a I am Virgo and I know the right thing to do this. And from a very logical, communicative perspective, let me share with you everything I've
Everything
figured
I
out.
know, everything. It's like someone asks me one question and they leave me with like 10 different resources. I'll send them like 5 different links to different things, and then they've got 4 different book titles. I mean, that's
So it's the way that you're doing neurodivergent behaviors, but it's your energy, your
yeah,
flavor, and you see that in the chart too.
I love that.
So people come to me and they're like, "What does an autistic chart look like?" And I'm like, "It looks like a chart.
It looks
It
like,
just
yeah,
be
absolutely.
anything."
Yeah. So another question that I have, because I remember in the certification, Naomi talked about if you didn't feel safe in any of your big three whatsoever, then you would go more into your Mercury. I feel like that's probably more where I masked the most is my Leo. Because as
Hmm.
I as I watched people, as I even picked out personas, because people said I reminded them of Dharma from Dharma and Greg. I reminded them of Phoebe from Phoebe and our friends. I would study these people. Like I didn't even realize that I did, but I did because that was a persona that was accepted. And my Mercury and Leo could play with that, right? Like it could work with that. So I'm kind of wondering if that's a common thing for neurodivergence, that they go more to their Mercury to mask.
I would honestly, okay, my opinion and hypothesis is something I would want to observe and test. Observe. What a Scorpio thing. But my guess would be yes, because whereas the energy of the rising sign may not be something that an holistic person even consciously experiences and notices and pays attention to, unless it's like in a strong contrast with their other energies in like a tense aspect where they're like, oh, I am noticing a thing. Whereas I don't, it doesn't matter how easy of a placement your rising sign could be. I do think that that's a different experience when you're neurodivergent. People respond to that differently because the natural way that you move forward, that you approach is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, where some people move into their rising sign as a coping mechanism, I would not be surprised to see that neurodivergent move out of their rising sign as a coping mechanism pretty immediately and then just run to whatever is safe. Because we live in a world that overvalues and misperceives logical, thought oriented energy, Mercury is a safe place. Mercury tends to be a safe place for people. I wouldn't say that that is true like 100% of the time, but I would think that that would be a very common place for people to sit. I mean, as someone who's my Mercury is part of that Pisces
Yeah.
stellium, so that is definitely where I lived.
Yeah. I actually think Mercury is part of my cradle.
Hmm.
I think it is. My sun sign is. I have to look at that, but I know I have a cradle that I run to for sure. Um, so another thing I was thinking about is as people are discovering, like let's say they find out their natal chart and they start to really uncover themselves. Um, what do you think is the best advice for when they start unmasking in that way of being more authentic, or really utilizing those energies that are available to them that they're more aware of now, when other people in their lives that have known them a certain way, what's your advice? Especially with rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Yeah, okay, that is a conversation unto itself, right? Um, want to clarify the question a little bit
Please,
first.
because I just spouted it out.
Yes. So this is less of a how do I use the chart to unmask and adjust in a healthy way, and more of a as I'm doing this process, people in my life are gonna have an opinion about that. What do I do? Kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, humans are not static. Even neurotypical people are not static. People change, and they're allowed to. And so, to an extent, it does not matter if this other person thinks that you've changed, or like part of it is I think we are extra sensitive to being misunderstood and misperceived. It once again it goes back to that authenticity piece. There's a lot of pressure on being seen and recognized for the reality, and like we want that to be seen. So first, it's really hard, but be be start to try and become comfortable with being misunderstood, with being misperceived, because that's a huge wound
Yeah, it
for
is.
neurodivergent people. So
Yeah.
it's
So
a
it just
process,
perpetuates.
it's a wound, but you can heal your wounds, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
starting to unpack that wound, and you can practice. You can practice when these situations come up where it's like, this person does not have an accurate read of this situation. This person does not have an accurate read of me. And that sucks. But is it my job to correct them? Is it
No,
even healthy?
no,
Would it feel good for
no.
me? Is it authentic?
Hmm.
And
Right.
to start establishing boundaries. Because part of the reason that we get so highly conditioned around some of our placements is because we are never allowed to learn boundaries and to have boundaries. It's always oh, whatever you want me to be, whatever you need. Anytime I have needs, they're seen as problems, and I can't even communicate what they are.
Right, because I'm not even aware of them because I've been masking for so long.
So there are these very basic level skills that weren't developed because they were misperceived from the
Right.
beginning.
Right.
So learning your own needs and then setting boundaries, learning how to communicate those needs, saying, hey, I appreciate that you want something different from me. No.
No.
You
Sorry, the answer is no.
don't even have to apologize. You can be kind and still say, no,
No.
that is not how this is going to go.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's going to give you the opportunity to adjust how you express your energy with people. Because as you learn boundaries, it's very hand in hand. Because boundaries are two-way. Boundaries are keeping people out, and boundaries are people keeping you safe, right? So as you learn boundaries, it becomes easier to see, ah, this is not a person or a circumstance in which I want to express in this way. Because it's a boundary. It's a boundary for me and it's a boundary from them. If I do, like it might just feeling those situations out.
Hmm.
And when it comes to like relationships, you actually already have established relationships.
Yeah.
Um, is this a person where I would prefer to distance myself? Is this a person where it is worth it to me to learn how to adjust my behavior in a way that is healthy because it's a healthy
Hmm. Hmm.
is this a person where I need to say, no, this is how I am, and I'm not creating distance, balls in your court. You get
Right.
to decide whether to take me as I am because adjustments are not it's not realistic to expect adjustments here or
Mhm.
not. So I'm thinking of relationships where um, both my older siblings are projectors,
Oh
and
yeah.
both
Yeah, that's right.
my older siblings also run softer energies than mine.
Yeah.
And it is healthy and kind, and it feels good for me to be able to say, hey, I'm a lot. And it's okay for them to ask for small doses from me. And
Hmm.
I don't have to take that personally. And I understand why that is.
Right.
And I can do small doses for them in a way that feels good for me.
Right.
And that has been really helpful for our relationship because as things readjust there, it was hard at first to be like, oh, you can only do small doses of me. Why can't you take me as I am?
Because I just want to be real with
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
then as I tried, and I tried to be both self-honoring and these relationships are genuinely important, like,
Hmm.
oh, there's very small adjustments that I can make that make this easier for them, and it's still good for me. And maybe that I'm hanging out with my sibling for a shorter amount of time,
Right.
or maybe it's being conscientious about my volume
Right.
because that is like a thing that I'm going to be louder by default and it's taxing to have to monitor. But I don't want to be the kind of person that's loud in public spaces. That is a desire that is authentic for me. And so it's something that I'm willing to work on. And it's going to make someone else's life comfortable too. So win win win, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Whereas another family member, it might not even be safe for me to have these conversations and have that kind of vulnerability. So we're just going to create some distance, um, go up, however is safe,
Hmm.
and leave it at that. And then another family member might be like, hey, I need you to understand that the way that you have been perceiving me is wrong. And I understand why you have perceived me that way. And I'm not gonna, it's just not true for me.
Yeah.
It's a hard persona to keep up. I lived that way because I thought I needed to make other people happy, and I suffered. And because you care about me, I'm letting you know, and this is your opportunity to re-get to know me and to see me for who I am. And we'll create a relationship that's healthy and better and based on what is actually real, or you can opt out now. But I'm not going to go back to the way that I was.
Okay, so for everyone here, Elise is going to write down that script for you. She's gonna put it down below because that was beautiful. It's like I always want to be able to say those things. It just doesn't come out that way ever.
Hmm.
That was
It's
beautiful.
clumsy. It's super clumsy at first, no matter what, because your native language is different. And you're in the process of reclaiming your native language at the same time as still trying to speak someone else's. So, I
Right.
mean, give yourself some grace in the process.
Yeah, setting boundaries, man. I just feel like I'm either too bold or too blunt, or they miss it completely.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I need to
The
work on that.
default is extreme in some ways with someone who is neurodivergent. I'm going to like it feels good to express this energy to the fullest extent or
Mhm.
not at all.
Exactly.
And learning how to turn up and down the volume and modulate it is a skill
It is a
that
skill,
you
and
learn.
you're learning it beautifully. I love it. So I was thinking about one more thing, but maybe it's time to be done. This is wonderful. Thank you. This is so good. Helps me,
Really glad.
yeah, it helps me kind of look back and say, oh, oh, mm.
And again, I want to reach the people who are like, but I don't want to. I can't. I don't have the energy to do all of these things. It is 100% a process.
It is.
You don't have to do all of the things, learn all of the skills, be all of the ways, and heal all at once,
Mm-mm.
right?
No,
So
we don't.
wherever you're at in the process is good and it's enough. And if you can only do one thing, it's to forgive yourself
Yeah.
all of the time.
Just, like my first step, this might be kind of silly, but I stopped wearing jeans. I was like, no more. I hate them and I'm not going to wear them anymore. And I'm going to wear dresses more and like really baggy pants.
I super love that.
Like it was just that simple, but I just unsubscribed from jeans.
Um, some things that I have done is I don't always wear makeup in
Me
professional
neither.
situations. Even
So
when I'm
great.
showing up and I'm like in front of people and I'm doing all the things, I will only wear makeup when I want to because
Yes.
I do love it. It just takes time and
Yes.
it's a skill that I'm developing.
Right. And it takes energy. Because
Hmm.
especially like with my perfectionism, I'm just like, it never looks right. And so it just drains me. And then also just with the sensitivities and like the chemicals and stuff, I just want to opt out of that too.
One step at a time, and at every point of the journey where you let go of a behavior or a choice that just doesn't feel good anymore, even if it ever did,
Right.
and you make a new choice, be really, really intentional about that choice, really, really clear.
I like that.
This is an area in which a little bit of extreme area energy is good because if you can be like, no, we're either all in or we're all out. Like I either engage in the same pattern forever or I make a new choice and I commit to it. And it's
Mhm.
not like you're committing to be that way 100% of the time. We both just said, like, I wear makeup, right?
Right.
But it allows you to take ownership of me of being a different way, and that's going to protect you and make it easier to set boundaries. So it's like, no, if someone comes at me and says, hey, it's unprofessional to not wear makeup because this is something I intentionally chose for myself and I decided it is just not worth it. It is not worth it to try and pretend that that's necessary.
Mhm.
I can be like, actually, no, thanks. I appreciate your opinion, but it's not relevant for my life right now.
Right. Absolutely. No, I love that. Yeah, and it is funny, this idea of like you need to be this way consistently. I get
No.
stuck in that. That's probably the black and white Virgo-ness.
Hmm.
But um yeah, I kept saying, well, if I'm not if if I don't really like to wear makeup, then I just need to be completely no makeup all the time. And you're right. It doesn't have to be so extreme. I can just say, I feel like it today. I don't feel like it today. And that's okay. I don't know why in my mind I feel like I have to present this consistent persona, which is stupid.
It's an idea that was pressed upon yourself, and part of the process of remasking is taking back your power of choice and using your choice to choose what's best for you.
Yeah,
And what's best for you in one moment may not be best for you in another moment. And
absolutely.
that's okay too.
Absolutely. I love it. Oh, this is so good. Okay, well, we probably should end, but this goes really great because again, you are an image consultant, and I can't think of a better image consultant than Elise because she's going to take you through an emotional journey. My goodness, it's not just going to
Mhm.
be physical change. It's not going to just be materialistic. It's going to be deep, right? So tell
Mhm.
me what that looks like. What does a consultation with you process with you look like?
Right now, it doesn't
Oh,
because I have taken a lot of my one-on-one um ways that you can work with me off the table
okay.
because Again, it goes back to intentional choice and reclaiming it
Hmm.
because whatever is best for you at the moment. Right now, I just do not have the capacity, energy, energy wise, to do so much work one on
Right.
one, face to face, especially since even though I take a step back from masking in a way that feels authentic, I do try to show up as my best self.
Of course you do.
Um, in a professional situation. And so it does tend to be, a little bit more draining than if I was hanging out with my bestie or my husband or something.
Absolutely.
So that being said, I feel I feel very strongly about this because when you when people generally talk about fashion and styling and try to sell you a makeover experience or sell you on the idea, right, of a makeover experience, it's if you make your outside more like what you want them to be, you'll be happier.
Hmm.
And to an extent, that's true,
Hmm.
right? Because oftentimes, not always, if what we desire our outside to look like is actually authentic to us, it can be healing and transformational and like super, super like an amazing experience, as effective as we want it to be to change your outsides. Because when
Hmm.
your outsides match your insides, you feel better. It's less of a drain on that authentic need, right? From the
I love
neurodivergent
that. Yes.
perspective.
It is a need. It is. It's such a need.
But
Need.
I don't think that it is effective in most cases to address changing your appearance from the outside in. You need to change from the inside out, and you do both at once. And it really goes back to there is cognitive dissonance that is taxing and heavy when your appearance is a super wide mismatch from who you feel you are on the inside. Like that is a genuine, painful, traumatic way to experience life that a lot of people are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you change your relationship with yourself, you change your relationship with your body, you allow yourself to be an authentic expression of who you are. And that's what facilitates real, helpful, enjoyable outsides appearance.
Love it.
Because so many people are like, oh, so if I just make myself the beauty standard, I'll be happy. And that's not the way to do it. So it's an internal journey and an external journey at the same time. And to put a little bow on this whole conversation, the same thing is true with masking and unmasking. It's an internal journey and an external journey at the exact same time,
It
where
is.
you get to choose how you want to show up and you get to do that in whatever way feels authentic and good for you in the moment. And it's an internal process as you let go of the conditioning, the wounding, the confusion about what is real for you and what isn't real for you.
So
It's a process.
fantastic. Maybe you should consider neurodivergent coaching when you get through your burnout or whatever. Just be like, I'm a neurodivergent coach because you're fantastic. Love it.
See that. That is
Absolutely.
a compliment I will receive with my whole heart.
Absolutely. I want you to coach me because this was really enlightening. All right. Well, thank you so much, Elise. And I'm sure I'll have you
Welcome,
back on again because there's plenty to talk about in this whole journey, right?
for sure. Yeah.
All right.
You have an enjoyable evening.
Thank you.